the bellabeautebar Pastel Garden palette. Not gonna lie, I'm excited about this one because it's been around for a little while in my collection, and finally I get to play with it. It is a gorgeous pastel palette, and apparently the brand reformulated, and these are supposed to be better than their previous matte shadows, which I am excited to test. So let's start. I'm also going to be comparing the bellabeautebar pastel formula to some of my favorite pastel formulas that I have in my collection. So if you're curious, keep on watching. I also have the corresponding loose pigments, and we will get into that later. Just to compare the formula, not the colors, I'm going to use the Blend Bunny Blends palette to create a similar look on the other eye. So clearly the colors are very different on both these two, but what I wanted to do is compare the formula. So what I've noticed with Blend Bunny is that they both fairly have the same kind of opacity, I would say. The bellabeautebar pastel formula is just a tad more pigmented, and the Blend Bunny formula from the Blends palette is a bit more blendable. So I would say these are kind of similar. So I think bellabeautebar did improve their formula, because I remember when I tried the Strange and Unusual palette, the two lightest colors in there, the light green and the white, they were not good at all. They were not pigmented enough at all. So I'm glad they switched things up a little, and I'm excited to get into the second look and compare that one with another one of my favorites. Let's try another shimmer from the bellabeautebar palette, just for fun, because these are definitely beautiful. Look at that, how shiny. So someone very kindly suggested that I use a white base to make the colors pop, but I never do that with any of my shadows, and I'm not gonna do that now because that would mean an unfair comparison. So the second palette that I want to compare the bellabeautebar to is the Natasha Denona pastel palette. This was my go-to pastel palette in last year, summer, and this is my favorite pastel formula for sure. So let's compare. The bellabeautebar shimmers are quite impactful and hard to take off from the eye, so you might see a little bit of shimmer. That is why. Let's start with this shade right here. These are going to be very simple two-tone looks because what I'm doing is just comparing the formula. The goal isn't to create elaborate looks. Gorgeous. Let's go in with this shimmer over here. This looks beautiful. These are flaky and gorgeous. Let's try another one. Flaky and very high impact in one swipe. So that is excellent. Now let's move on to the Natasha Denona side. Let's start with this shade from the Natasha Denona Pastel palette. So for the blue color, I prefer the Natasha Denona formula. And for the orange, I prefer the bellabeautebar. But that could be because this is a brighter orange and this is a more muted pastel color. So I'm not sure about that, but look at how opaque this blue is. So I'm glad that my favorite from last year is still relevant. Although bellabeautebar no doubt has done an excellent job on this one so far. Let's try Sunset Rose on this eye just for fun. That is beautiful. Let's move on to the third and final look, an eyeshadow palette comparison. FYI, if you have a hard time removing the bellabeautebar shimmers, use an oil-based remover like this one rather than a micellar water like this one. Recently, I came across another favorite matte formula of mine, and that is from Sugar Drizzle. So I thought I would compare the bellabeautebar formula to this one. This is an amazing formula, and it has a couple of those pastel shades that can be comparable to the bellabeautebar palette. So let's start and create a look with the bellabeautebar and compare. Let's start with this one. Wow, that is opaque. Look at these mattes, how opaque these are and how easily they built up. Let's put a couple of nice shimmers on just to test them out. These shimmers are so interesting. This one, called the Green Wizard, is green in the pan but has like a pinky purple shift. And this one, called Pansy, is purple in the pan and has a green shift. It's like alternating colors with the mattes, so this one's my favorite out of the looks we've done. So pretty. Now let's try to recreate something similar with the Sugar Drizzle The Mattes palette. The tones are going to be just a little bit off, but we're looking at the formula here, not the colors. So let's go. Going in with this shade. This shade is brighter and has more green in it than the one from bellabeautebar, but let's see what the formula is like. This lavender shade has a little bit more pink in it than the one from the bellabeautebar that I used here. I would say these are a bit brighter than pastels, but still quite impactful. Let's go in with a couple more shimmers from the bellabeautebar palette. Let's try this. And this. So this last shimmer, I'm not sure I'm a fan of the formula. It's more like a paste and just a little bit too oily and doesn't pick up that well on the finger. And just a little bit hard to spread because it's just slightly sticky like a paste. But the rest are nice flaky shimmers, so that's something to keep in mind. Again, this is not a true pastel look. It turned out more mid-tone than anything, but this is true pastel. Formula-wise, I think the Sugar Drizzle mattes were just a tad more pigmented, and they were also quite easy to blend, whereas the bellabeautebar pastels were also very pigmented. If Sugar Drizzle had some actual pastels to compare to, that would have been even better, but I think these two formulas are quite comparable. The Sugar Drizzle one is just slightly more pigmented and is opaque within like 2 swipes. You don't have to build it that much. And so does the bellabeautebar. It's comparable, but the Sugar Drizzle is just slightly better. I will take this off and we will try on some of the loose pigments. So the multiple eye looks have definitely taken their toll on my makeup and my eyes. The shimmer formula is quite daggery, so it does feel like tiny daggers when you remove it with a cotton pad. Even though I did it with an oil-based remover, it took a while. So if you're wearing it once, that's fine. You can just take it off at the end of the day, but not recommended to do it over and over. Anywho, let's get into the loose pigments. I have here with me 7 of them, which is all of them. I have my white base on. It would not be inaccurate to say that loose pigments scare me. I'm scared of them flying all over the place, but they are beautiful. Let's start with the first one, which is called Sunset Rose. This one is a bright red to pink to gold to green multichrome. Next we have Pansy. Gorgeous, like a fuchsia pink to blue purple. This one is Green Wizard. I applied the Unearthly Glimmer Grasp as a base, which is basically a glue-like substance, and it definitely helps them stick better. Here is Green Wizard. Definitely my favorite so far. On this eye, I'm going to prime with the bellabeautebar Shimmer Stay, which is a fairly new release, and see if it works for their loose pigments. Next I have Daylily. which, as expected, flew everywhere. These loose pigments have slightly larger particle size than I expected. I expected it to be very finely milled, which is what people used to use back in the day when I was a child. Here is Daylily. This shade, I think, can be used as a topper because it has that light yellow base, which is barely visible. But the shimmer that goes from a green to a turquoise to a pink to a purple, that is gorgeous. And the shimmer stay definitely helped. I think that is the right thing to use. It has a thinner, more emollient consistency, and it's easier to spread than the unearthly glimmer grasp for sure. This is Blue Star. I see flecks of blue, green, pink, and purple. On the eyes, it looks kind of similar to Pansy, which is right here, except the tones are different. This is more of a blue purple, whereas that is more of a pinky purple. But the finish, the glow, that is kind of the same. Next up is Aster. Very sparkly. The last one is Archangel, a yellow with a pink red kind of shift. Let's just put it on the brow bone. So that one is refusing to hold because there's no primer near the brow bone, so I'm just going to put some here, which took off my blush. Never mind. This is not a highlighter, this is just a swatch, because this is not a highlighter formula. Now look at how glowy that is. It seems yellow over here. You can see it turn yellow, whereas here it's purplish pink, and in my mirror I can see a yellow with a pink flip. So multi-chrome for sure. These are lovely, but without a very tacky base, these will not work. And I would recommend the Shimmer Stay because I've tried like 4 different primers on the eyes now, and this is the one that works best and is the most user-friendly. Of course, they made it for their products, so it is well suited to these loose pigments. So, final thoughts about the palette. I think they really did something with the formula. I think it is quite amazing. I think this is the top contender for my favorite pastel eyeshadow palette of 2023. Unless something else comes and knocks this one out of the park, I don't foresee anything else replacing this as my favorite eyeshadow palette of the year. So that should tell you plenty about my thoughts on this. I think this is an excellent formula, but even more so, I think the fact that this is a large palette with all sorts of pastel options, I think that is amazing. There are lighter pastels, there are some mid-tone shades, every option that you could possibly need to blend out your looks with or make them a little bit brighter. And obviously shimmers to amp things up, like you saw how amazing the shimmer quality was. I think that is an A+. All of the palettes that I compared this to honestly don't really hold a candle because the Sugar Drizzle one is not really a pastel palette. The Natasha Denona one is a pastel palette, but it's a small palette. It doesn't have all these options, and the shimmers are nothing to write home about. The Blend Bunny formula is nice, but it's not as good as this one. The Natasha Denona is a small palette, but the formula of Natasha Denona may be slightly better in some of the shades, not all of them. And the Sugar Drizzle is not even a pastel palette, even though the formula is kind of comparable to this one. So I think this one wins in all respects. This is my perfect pastel palette, to be honest. I would have compared this to the Glamlight Ice Cream Dream palette, but I can't seem to find it anywhere. Hello, editing makeup analyst here. I actually wanted to compare these two, the bellabeautebar Pastelgarden and the Ice Cream Dream palette from Glamlight, but I couldn't find this one. It's not too old to my collection. I couldn't find it initially, but now I have, and I'm interested to know what the differences in the formula are because I haven't used this in a while. So let's get into it. The eyes are nice and primed, and this eye is going to be all bellabeautebar. Let's move on to the other eye with the Ice Cream Dream palette. So this is how it's looking. The Glamlight palette definitely has a solid formula. However, I would like to point out that these are not true pastels. These are actually quite saturated for being a pastel. Color is so relative, and now that I look at it side by side with the bellabeautebar palette, I realize that these are way more saturated and kind of mid-tone as opposed to the bellabeautebar palette, which is actually pastel. Let me show you. Here they are side by side. You can see how the bellabeautebar looks kind of washed out and this looks very vibrant and bright. That is exactly the case in real life. So point goes to bellabeautebar for exactly the right color story and actual pastel colors. In terms of formulas, Glamlight does have a solid formula. The Glamlight ones are quite pigmented but also a bit hard to blend. Because if you see, I actually tried quite a bit to blend this edge over here, but it's still grabbing on to the primer, I believe. Whereas this one, this blended a little bit more seamlessly, and the colors, well, are lighter. My perspective on these have changed. This is not a pastel palette anymore. That is the pastel palette. Interesting. In terms of the shimmers, this doesn't hold a candle to the bellabeautebar shimmers. Okay, let's carry on with the video. About the loose pigments, I think these are gorgeous. Obviously, application can be finicky, but this shimmer stay is a must-have companion for these. Without that, you will possibly not have a good application. And I must say the loose pigments are nicely coordinated with the palette. Like, these shades are definitely more pastel toned. Except the Sunset Rose, which is like a reddish color. The rest are light topper-like shades, so that's pretty great. I was hoping these would be more finely milled, but these are slightly chunky, glittery formula, so keep that in mind. I also have an eyeshadow palette on my agenda, which is a huge enigma to me. Without giving too much away, it was a shitty palette for me, but I never heard anything bad about it from anyone else. That is also a pastel palette. So that video will be coming soon. That is all for today. I am done with my analysis. I hope you found this helpful. If so, thumbs up. Those are all my thoughts, and I will be back with new videos. Bye now.